Okay. So my name is Courtney Johnson Woods. This is where I would have come in at 9:10, and I'm going to talk to you about partnering with the Center of Excellence in Healthy Water Solutions. For those of you who don't know or missed our first welcome on our opening day, we talked about what centers of excellence are. There are 17 in New York State. There are also CATS, C-A-T-S, which are other centers that typically do more advanced commercialization, and there are several across the state. We are part of the COE, which is more early stage innovation or mid-stage innovation, and we are part of New York State's innovation apparatus and network, and the hope is that through collaborations, we can help fund innovation across New York. And as you can imagine, in New York State, we are the water, but there are also other centers that are doing water as well. But we are the only center focused fully on water challenges and solutions. There is a great book out, if you have not yet read it, by Barton Thompson called Liquid Asset. I think it came out in 2023. And he basically, even though his work is out west and he's a Stanford professor and lawyer, legalese, and he brings together case examples where businesses and innovation intersect with water challenges and universities. So it's basically how can we form industry-university partnerships around challenges. And I loved the quote of one of the reviewers, Justin Scott Coe, who curates something called the Water Shelf. So if you're interested in reading more books and papers, he curates what's out there in water. And some of it is focused on Western, because they're also out in California, but he also covers national resources as well. And he said, this particular book and the work that Thompson had done helps us think more broadly of water as an asset in a way that combines for-profit economics with public benefits into a cohesive valuation of water on an element that's both vital and desirable. And the reason why I thought that stood out is, of all the conferences I attend now that I'm in this space, that is what people talk about, right? Economic drivers, what we need to do in the way of water solutions, whether it is advancing new technologies that have startups that wind up, fostering new job creation in New York State, to how do we value water as an asset if it's drinking water, or if it's a lake that doesn't have harmful algal blooms, and thus that can continue to have recreational activities throughout the summer, and then tourism dollars and restaurant eating, etc. So how do we value water as an asset? And obviously New York State, that is one of our natural resources that we could talk about, which is why so much industry is coming here in terms of water valuation. That's a valuable asset here. So that's what we are charged to do from New York State, which is probably more challenging than one of the COEs that perhaps focuses on how to promote the gaming industry, right? You can talk about the economics of new job creation when you're talking about, we have a new company that's doing gaming. Not always so easy when you're talking about improving the quality of your water, your drinking water. How do you measure that in economic terms? Not necessarily short term, often it's long term over the life cycle of water. And so we have that charge. How do we create economic opportunity through partnerships and collaboration? And then also, how do we define our success as a center of excellence? And so that's something that we have been working on. We're considered one of the more new, although we're like in year 6, but we're a newer center. And we're excited to be partnering with other centers that have existed longer than we have and have shared interests. We sent a delegation recently, New York State did. They haven't talked about it or advertised it. They, brought in some of the most valued experts across institutions who are working in the area of PFAS. And they sent them over to a couple of different countries that are also doing work to explore what do those models look like. And the European model is even more pronounced in the way of industry academic partnerships, in that industry actually funds in several countries academic research related to PFAS. And so what would that model look like here in the United States? We're not sure, but certainly we're hopeful and encouraged that industry is seeing academic institutions and research institutions as valued partners in basic science and applied science, and how we then apply it to more innovative solutions and in the work that industry is doing as well. So that brings us to our center. For those of you who probably know by now, you see both logos, Clarkson University, SUNY ESF. We are a rarity in that we are a dual institutional partnership in a COE, not just one at one school. And as you can imagine, we're very different universities. We have very different strengths and different capacities that we bring together. So we are already a collaboration, which becomes really interesting on projects that require sort of cross-disciplinary focus. So when we talk about water challenges and who might come to us and partner with us, we think about water rights holders, which is a term that has sort of branched off of stakeholders. Rights holders are people who have access to, rights to access and use water, right? So you have individual companies, industries, landowners, municipalities. That's part of the water challenge that they're immersed in. And then also you have stakeholders, those who actually utilize the water. That can also be municipalities, one and the same, stakeholders, rights holders, but also generally the public. Lake associations, environmental and advocacy groups, water and environmental nonprofits. Often those are the people who have vast interest in ensuring that those who have rights to the water are utilizing it in a sustainable and responsible way. And so that's the challenge. And anytime you go to a meeting or a conference, you're seeing people typically from sort of like that whole ecosystem around a challenge. And certainly our meeting attracts that. We have everybody from cross-sector of representation that comes out of interest in what we're presenting. So what do we do? What's our innovation capacity? Obviously, we have researchers, and we have several leading in the areas of things like PFAS and HABs and biochemistry and understanding wastewater treatment approaches. And so ESF has its capacity, Clarkson has its capacity, and we also combine. Clarkson University has one of the only Department of Defense accredited labs for PFAS analysis, which means that we can process it quicker, often more cheaply than some of the other competing private labs. So we're very happy to have that as an asset, and we think it's going to become valuable, especially in central New York and northern New York, where a lot of the supply chain around the semiconductor industry and fabs, et cetera, will be potentially looking at how do we better understand our water resources. We also have CAMP, which is a Center for Advanced Materials, and so if you have a technology and you'd like to advance the materials on that, we have expertise, and we are one of the state cats in that. And then obviously we have our networks and partners too, and different faculty members each get out there, and they're part of their own societies and their associations, and so they have their tentacles out in different ways to bring partnerships together. And then as long as there's a research question, so say you have a research challenge and you think maybe I would like to partner with the COE on that challenge, as long as we can determine an R&D question, we can delineate that question, we have the capability of funding that project. And so it could be sensing and detecting, field testing and pilot studies, analysis, validation studies, commercialization and acceleration. Material and process improvement. You've heard a couple of our researchers talk about what they're doing in remote sensing. We're building a partnership that has several lake associations now around how do you bring that technology to a lake that doesn't necessarily have anybody beyond citizen scientists and volunteers, and how do you bring that together and create a really value-added and much-needed type of technological application to managing water resources. And so if there's a research question you think that sits there in your organization, or even maybe you're part of a lake association in your other world, think about potential opportunities where research intersects. And then we are funded by NYSTAR. So we have a pot of money that sits there every year when we're funded, when the state budget actually gets funded. And we take a look at using that pot of money on those projects with a one-to-one match. And I'm going to talk to you about what that match is because that question comes up all the time. But we typically fund seed grants, which are sort of more early stage types of projects, commercialization grants, and then also education and outreach grants. Those are for our external partners. And then internally, we also bring partners together to fund grants that will help people get more external funding. So National Science Foundation, for example. If you've met people here and you see a big potential collaboration for greater funding, we can help fund bringing you together to work those details out and to collaborate and to get a really good proposal together. And so the hope is that ultimately the solutions that come out of these projects have economic drivers we can report. And so we do assess our proposals that come in every year based on economic potential. And as I said, clean drinking water, we can assess that as an economic long-term benefit. Quality of life, tourism for local communities, et cetera, and recreation values. We also have to take a look at what are the public benefits of those projects. Here are some of our partners. You've probably seen this slide if you were already here at the conference, but we typically work with companies, nonprofits, and startups. This year, I'm really excited. I've been in this role for a year, so I was grant funded. Get out there, create partnerships, and I've been so excited to bring some of these together. One of the ones on the right that just came through is Moby Filters. It's a New York City startup company that's getting lots of accolades across the country, lots of grant opportunities in California, a lot of startup and angel investment in this company. He's doing work on microplastic filtrations coming from commercial laundries. And so we're looking at two different projects working with Moby on improving the technology and then also accelerating a key component that will allow him to scale. So that was a really exciting opportunity we brought this year. And these are some other examples of some of the associations we're working with and lake associations, et cetera. And we've got some really exciting proposals in our BD hopper. We are also looking at establishing a test bed for PFAS solutions. We are looking at, in Chazy, New York, there is an old, well, I shouldn't even say old, it was a new Pfizer facility. The Pfizer wasn't in there very long, but left behind amazing lab capabilities and the ability to process. They have their on-site ability to process wastewater. And so we're looking at how can we bring together innovators to test their solutions for PFAS sensing, treatment, destruction technologies on side-by-side potential challenges or use of that space. And then the company also has the capabilities through the DEC and EPA to process leachate, and so we're going to be looking at ways to test. And so we're exploring that. We have proposals in at the federal government and also at the state government, and the federal government proposals have gone through the next stage. And so that could be an exciting opportunity if you're working at a university and you're a professor who has technology, or you're a company working on PFAS technology and you need validation. This could be an amazing opportunity. So we're hopeful that that comes through. And if you have interest in that, please let us know if you're either a beneficiary of that or if you're an innovator. So these are the three biggest questions that come up. How do we partner with you? How do we forge a partnership? We have an RFP that comes out to our faculty every spring, typically, so it's out now. And our faculty members are looking at partnerships and partnership opportunities and the kinds of projects I described. And then I'm trying to bring some of those to our faculty members and say, how might we forge these collaborations if they're in your area of expertise? This could also include reaching out to other institutions. So if we have other colleges here, representation, and you're interested in collaborating with one of our researchers, that's a great way to start a robust partnership around a research challenge. We also have a pot of money reserved for projects that come in throughout the off cycle, so not part of our RFP. Because the state funding typically doesn't get released until the fall, and water in New York State is typically examined, especially in lakes and streams, et cetera, and wetlands during the summer months and not our long winters. We typically fund and then hope that the project can extend into the following summer where the field work can be conducted, if that's sort of the project you're thinking of doing. So we have a no-cost extension for the duration as long as our center is still on our grants. We have a couple of more years for that. And we're probably going to reserve some funding for the PFAS test bed, just to make sure we have that availability for innovators. We do require a one-to-one match, and that's stipulated on our website and all of our materials, and people always say, well, what counts, right? Like, say you're a lake association, you have very little money and you're all volunteers. We look at the match for in-kind as well. So it's not just cash, here's cash for the project, though for industry or others that do have cash available, we love that. And especially if the match could come from other outside external funding mechanisms like federal dollars or foundation dollars, et cetera. It's a great way to show in New York State we're leveraging broad partnerships. So in-kind support could be partner salaries, dedicated time, supplies, facilities use, equipment use. If you're on a lake, a boat use, right? And citizen scientists, volunteers who are already part of vast networks, and other external funding, as I said. So those count in the match, and we work through what that looks like and then put the whole package together for funding, for NYSTAR funding. And then the question becomes, when you're thinking about these partnerships, is how should we measure these projects in terms of economic development, because we are a driver in New York State. And so some of the obvious are, if you're a startup, it could be job creation, could be improvement of product, so you're going to see more sales or reduced costs, could be improved processes that actually hit your bottom line, supply chain expansion or entrepreneurism, recreation dollars, tourism dollars, risk mitigation, looking long term, what you think the value of healthy water might be on your lake for the residents, and improved health, right? So what are the future cost savings of being able to mitigate health implications that are aligned or attached to maybe water quality degradation? And so all of that is out there in the research that we know of, and we take a look at what that looks like. And so we're here at this conference, our staff. You've probably seen or talked with Stefan and Stephen. They are our co-directors. One is from Clarkson. Steve is from ESF. Stefan's from Clarkson. Donna, who puts on this conference, does an amazing job because she's behind the scenes doing all of the hard work, as is Molly Schultz. ESF and Clarkson counterparts. They work together, and I bridge both, and I'm the BD and partnership manager, and would love to talk to you if you have ideas. So I've already had several over the course of the conference, and it's been great. So if we have time, we do, because I wasn't even supposed to start until 9:10, and I'm quick when I speak. You will see some cards sitting in the center of your table, and maybe one or two pencils we've dropped off if you're completely electronically taking notes at the conference. I would like you to think about and write down, if you wouldn't mind, your name and your affiliation, and what might be some water challenges you and your organization might tackle more ideally in partnership. That doesn't mean necessarily just with the COE, but we would love that, because then we have ideas. But if you've met other people here, so for example, we run in the same circles, often on the same circuit of conferences. We see people from Syracuse University's COE and centers often, and we're talking about, maybe we should do a septic symposium and talk about septic innovation, which is very important where we are in rural parts of New York. So what are some of the ideas where partnerships might be of value? And if you wouldn't mind writing down a couple, so take a few minutes to think about it. And you can leave them right in the center of the table before you go off to break, and then we will collect those. But if you came up with any ideas and you met people and you were like, this would be a great way to partner, we would love to hear about that. And then maybe we will get involved to step in and help with whatever partnership you forge. So, thank you. I'll take questions if anybody has any before your homework. Yes, in the back. Yes.
Sure, I need one. I'm curious, and I'm just formulating the question, and I'm speaking off the fly. So, it's great to hear that you have a PFAS lab that can be utilized. I'm curious what outreach you have done to Micron, to Onondaga County, to the town of Clay, and particularly given the authorities that both Onondaga County has, their agencies, the WEP, the infrastructure that's being built down here. There just seems like there's all kinds of opportunities for investigation, collaboration, coordination, communication, and you could be the driver. Also DEC in this region, and also other folks that are here. Regarding water and the Great Lakes. So I'm just curious, and I apologize if I'm being verbose, but I'm just trying to, see how you have already reached out, because that's really a challenge. Everyone is busy with their own jobs, at back home, and including the county, the town, Micron. Everyone's got on their own schedule, and they're very busy. So it requires leadership and outreach directly.
Right. Well, thank you. That's a really good question, and I don't necessarily want to speak on specifics to beyond say, we have a lot of Clarkson and SUNY ESF alumni working at different engineering firms that are also working with Micron. So we've also reached out to them to let them know, here's our capacity, here's what we do, how might we be a resource for you. We're also talking to local leaders here and county leaders and talking to them about our capabilities. We definitely want to be, as the full center dedicated to water, especially in the region, right? We have a regional footprint. We definitely want to be part of those conversations, and we've been invited to quite a few. So I would say it's early, right? Micron is especially looking at things like workforce development as one of their primary discussions, but certainly water is on the agenda. And we've had numerous conversations with people who will be involved in enabling sort of the water infrastructure that's going to fuel the entire industry across the corridor, right? The Smart Eye corridor. And so, yeah, they're aware of what we're doing, and we're constantly in front of them, talking to them about what. And I encourage you, if you have an idea related to that where you feel like we might be a really good asset, even if that is bringing people together, I would love it if you would write that down with a specificity, and then we can take a look at that. So thank you. That's a really good question. Any other questions?
I'll ask another one if no one else has one. So from what you're explaining, it sounds very good. And that's wonderful. However, it's very difficult here, particularly I think there's challenges for the private sector to interact with the local authorities in this region, because we have so many. For example, like in terms, again, I'll speak about Micron and all the developments in Onondaga County. The issue is that we have so many governmental units. New York State has over 60 counties overall, if you're just considering upstate. Then when you look at Onondaga County, this one particularly, which includes Clay, where Micron is being developed, and other businesses also in the industrial park, you've got 30 independent volunteer fire departments, for example. They are independent of county government and town government or village government. It's very different, for example, compared to elsewhere in the country, where, for example, Micron is in Boise. You've got Boise and Ada County. You don't have so many other local governments. When I read, for example, the DEIS for Micron, it was kind of glossed over. I don't want to be critical. It wasn't really the scope necessarily of a DEIS, although it could have been more elaborated. But it mentioned public safety, fire, other functions of local government, and PFAS, which you can bring to bear on these issues that Micron and the county and the town of Clay are facing, is an issue that crosses many governmental units. I think if you all could invest in a deeper understanding of governing And again, I don't mean to be critical, but I've worked for states and local governments out west, and it's important to recognize that water rights is a legal term. Back east, it's very different, and I don't understand it. But in order to do my job, I actually took a course in water rights law when I worked in Colorado, because it was so important. So this is something to also look at, is to really understand how water is really governed here, including water, wastewater, storm drainage. It's very complicated in New York State. I think everyone in this room understands that,
Thank you.
recognizes it, and you would be a big help.
Thank you. That we'll certainly look at the ways in which that governance functionality intersects with what we might be doing in R&D, right? So we know where our lane is in that, and then we would look to partners to bring that to bear. And so that's really great advice going forward in terms of what we would be looking at, especially if we do a test bed. So thank you very much for that. Okay. All right, so I think that's the last question. And do you have an announcement?
I'm going to make just a quick announcement.
Great. And please fill out the little question mark there.
Thanks, Courtney.